And I talked to AJAY, the CEO of MasterCard, and asked him what role corporations can play when it comes to financial inclusion.
We discovered that our war was on cash, and cash, essentially, that's our business. And cash is not the friend of these folks who are excluded. And so one way to reach at cash was to also tackle the problem of exclusion. So this came to being like a good commercial logic for what made a lot of sense to do. That's how it started. So what we've gone after is to use technology, which is a great leveler of playing fields, combine that with some interesting partnerships, and both public sector partnerships, but also recently, with the Queen's help, CEO-level partnerships in the private sector. And you cobble that technology and those partnerships together, and you can start making a real difference to a number of people who are left out otherwise.
So you talk about a vision for a cashless society. What does that look like?
Well, I don't think you'll ever go cashless, because I think cash has a role to play in its own fundamental form. What really it means is to reduce the level of cash in the economy from where it is today to a much lower level. So if you can reduce 85 to 50, the opposite side of that is greater transparency, greater revenue recognition, less corruption, less wastage, less leakage, all the things that cash can otherwise enable things to happen in a society.
Let me give you one specific example of a challenge that you have in a country like India, where we've both lived and worked. Something like 2% of Indians have a credit card. Indians still like to keep cash.
That's correct.
How do you overcome that? It's a cultural issue.
Well, that's correct, but it's not just about credit cards, because I'm not in the credit card business. I'm in the technology and infrastructure business. So you could use a debit card, a prepaid card, a phone, a fingerprint, your irises. I don't really bother about the form factor. I bother about the fact that it's electronic, from some account to some account. That's what I really care
But there's
about.
still a challenge, even with
It's still
that,
a big challenge. Although, as you can see, with mobile technology, with players coming into India, it's catching on. But yes, here are the issues with it. The first is that people have to have an identity. If they don't have an identity, you cannot open an account. India, actually, with its Aadhaar system, has attempted to democratize identities. There are ways of doing it better and quicker, and people can debate that, but they've done it. So that enables the opening of accounts. Once you've opened the account, we in MasterCard with our partners, we've reached 360 million people in the last few years to open accounts for them. The problem is, it's not just enough to open the account. You've got to get money into it, and then you've got to start beginning to use it as well. Once you do the usage, you start creating credit histories, you could become eligible for insurance, the kind of things that a number of countries are trying to do.
And lastly, you talk about technology being one of the game changers here. How can that eradicate corruption in some of the countries that you mentioned where there is an issue?
Technology creates transparency. So that's the biggest asset in fighting corruption. Corruption thrives when there's dark shadows. It doesn't thrive in open light. But it all finally comes down to jobs and quality of life. And if you can create the right jobs, then companies like ours benefit from people who have jobs, steady incomes. They will shop. When they shop, I'll benefit.
AJAY, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to meet you.